Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where I talk with CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, LendingTree, OpenTable, Act Software, and many more. Also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And I'm really excited today. My guest is Brent Freeman, who is a serial entrepreneur. He's the founder and president of Stealth Venture Labs. It's a digital marketing team for hire that helps subscription brands to find product market fit. He's doing some really interesting things with big brands and small companies, helping them to evolve and adapt in today's post-COVID-19 world that we live in now. They've assembled an amazing team of proven digital marketing veterans that generate over $2 billion in online sales throughout their careers at brands such as JustFab, Fabletics, Zulily, Thrive Market, ShoeDazzle, Evite, Uber, all kinds of different companies like that as well. So I'm excited to dive into this topic with him. But first, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media, which I co-founded with Dr. Jeremy Weiss. And our mission is to connect you to your best referral partners and customers. And we do that through our Done For You podcast solution and content marketing. I firmly believe if you have a business, you should have a podcast, period. It's one of the best things I've done, hand down. And I get to talk to smart people like Brent here and pick their brain, which is really a treat for me and a benefit for all of you listeners as well. So if you want to learn more about how to do it, you can go to rise25media.com. All right. So Brent, I'm excited to talk to you here today. We know each other through a couple of different connections. We're both involved in EO locally here in San Francisco Bay Area. And you've got an amazing, interesting career. Having worked with a lot of different brands, and you've got a portfolio of companies. You have both. It's an interesting model that you work with. You both help outside clients and companies, and you also launch your own companies as well internally, in-house. So talk a little bit about how you landed on a business model like that, where it's both you have your own companies you develop in-house, and you also help clients.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, John. And thank you for having me on today. Really excited to chat and love what you guys are doing at Rise 25. And I also agree on the podcast front. We're launching one of our own here shortly. So yeah, it's been a journey. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been running my own digital startups for almost 15 years. And Stealth Venture Labs, my current company for the last 6 years, really was started out of my own frustration, having run my own e-commerce marketplace platform previously, and spent about 5 years trying to crack the code of digital growth marketing through hiring of outside agencies and the false starts of trying to build an in-house team, and really just being frustrated with the empty promises that were being made all along the way. And just really found that the typical digital agency model was not aligned with the typical e-commerce operator from the beginning. And so by the time that I hired and fired over 10 agencies in my last e-commerce company, I really decided to build my own in-house team. And then that was its own set of landmines, right? People who were the right place, right time, had great resumes, but couldn't actually execute the way that we needed them to. People that had great track record experience, but weren't right for the stage of the business. I mean, every issue we ran into. And so when I jumped out of that company, my previous startup, I became an EIR, entrepreneur in residence and venture partner at a VC fund in Los Angeles. And I started helping early stage subscription and e-commerce companies build growth teams from the inside out as an advisor. And taking the knowledge I learned in my last company and applying it to theirs, advising turned to consulting, which turned to doing. And that's really how Stealth began. And so our business model really began as the anti-agency growth marketing team. Early days, people kind of called us the SWAT team of marketers, or somebody once called us the SEAL Team 6 of growth hackers. And so, truly, I started it also selfishly for myself, because one of the reasons in my last company wasn't the financial success I wanted it to be, was because we didn't move fast enough. We missed the crest of our market wave because of the issues cracking the marketing code. And by the time we cracked it, we were about a year too late. So Stealth, I started as the digital growth engine that I wish I had at the beginning of my previous company, selfishly, so I could incubate and accelerate my own concepts and ideas. And then we, for the last 6 years, have been using this to help co-found as well as accelerate early stage subscription and e-commerce brands from kind of the 0 to 1 phase, meaning I have an idea, I want to come to market and find product market fit, or I have revenue and I want to scale. And we've done several kind of scale up $10 million to $100 million revenue run rate phases.
Wow.
So, the short answer, that's the long answer. The short answer is I started Stealth because I wanted to have the engine to incubate my own ideas. And we've been doing that alongside of being a service provider for other companies for the last 6 years.
I want to ask about that subscription box companies, why that concept has been so popular, and where we are in terms of the stage of growth in the market. Is it something like other business models where it's going to fade out with time? So I want to ask on that. But first, before we get to that, you have a really interesting, when we first connected, we talked about this. You have an interesting background in that you graduated from college, and shortly after you graduated from college, I was looking at, recently when we first connected, I was looking at LinkedIn, and you started an international trading company shortly after college. And I thought that was so interesting. Like, how does one, I knew what I was doing at 23 years old, and it certainly wasn't starting an international trading company. So I'm always curious how someone, especially because you didn't study like international trade as your degree or anything like that, how did you end up in that right after college?
Yeah, so right after college, I launched this international commodities trading, import-export business with my best friend. He and I were co-presidents of the Entrepreneur Club our senior year in college. And I went to University of Southern California, USC, and took out about $250,000 of student loan debt to fund it, to go through that. And it was an investment for me. And so coming out of college with that much loan debt to pay back, it was like, oh crap, I need to do something to pay this back. And my best friend had worked for an uncle of his who was in the business, and he had made a lot of money the previous summer. And I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting. Tell me more about it. And I was determined to be an entrepreneur because I believed very passionately in how businesses should be run, how employees should be treated, and the ethical kind of social consciousness of how to run a business, and always wanted to be an entrepreneurial business owner. And
did you come from entrepreneurs?
So sort of
entrepreneurs in the family?
Yeah. So my stepmom, who raised me, she was an entrepreneur for 20 plus years, amazing role model in how to run a small to medium-sized business from home, nonetheless, when it was like not apropos and we weren't sheltered in place. And my father, who ran his own kind of sole proprietorship, he was an independent filmmaker, director of photography. So I came from that kind of freedom world of kind of creativity. It's the entrepreneurial and the freedom connecting. And I always knew that I wanted to apply that. I wasn't going to kind of work for the man, so to speak. It wasn't in my DNA. But I wasn't the kid that started lemonade stands and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't me. And so, when I actually got to the opportunity to start that commodities business, we didn't know what the heck we were doing, man. We were just running full speed into the dark. And I remember we took out a lawyer to say, ask him some questions. We were like, we have this idea for a business. We think we have another business partner. How do forming entities work? What is a C corporation? What is an LLC? And we took him to lunch. And after lunch, he gave us great information. And after lunch, he said, boys, the difference between entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs is what you do next. Are you going to come back to my office and incorporate, or are you going to go home and think about it, think of all the reasons why you shouldn't? And so we went to his office and we incorporated corporation.
Nice clothes on the lawyer.
Yeah, lawyers know what they're doing. He was. I give him a lot of credit, he, in terms of his mentorship, and he's been a very strong entrepreneurial lawyer in Los Angeles, and we didn't know what the heck we were doing, man. That's the honest truth. And for 2.5 years, almost 3, we kind of chased our tails, chasing the money. And what I realized in that whole process, long story short, on that business, we had an office in Dubai and in LA. I was 22, 23 years old, is that chasing the money for its own sake, just chasing money was an endless, never ending endeavor. And it was filled with a lot of loneliness and a lot of sorrow, actually. And age 24 or so, we closed a $10 million deal. We had worked 3 years for it. And I remember being on paper a millionaire the next day and waking up just feeling completely empty, feeling really lost, and was expecting to feel really full and, excited and all of that. And this was right at the global financial crisis. And so it wasn't too long thereafter that the GFC kind of took that business down, and what was tens of millions became millions, became hundreds of thousands. And I think I ended up walking with about 50 grand or so from that. Wow. And it was the best life lesson I've ever had about the importance of money, but also the finite happiness that just money can bring.
So what did you do next after that? It looks like it was a little while after you founded Roost. Roost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roost was the digital marketplace platform. And so what I was determined to do in my next venture when I got back to Los Angeles was to use for-profit business to create social impact as well as profits. And so after that, I started a marketplace, an online marketplace like Etsy, for socially conscious fashion brands. There were lots of them popping up in Los Angeles at the time, following kind of the Tom Shoes business model. And we aggregated them and put them under one roof in a SaaS-based marketplace. And the hypothesis was, if we embedded social good into the shopping experience, if we embedded social good, we would be able to increase conversion, increase lifetime value, and increase sharing. It was a heck of a ride. I didn't know anything about technology. Building technology.
That's a big shift to go from trading commodities in Dubai to creating, software.
I didn't give two craps about commodities in Dubai, if I'm honest. I really didn't. What I liked and loved the most about building that business was working with my best friend, was traveling, and was building an actual business, like taking care of employees and setting up healthcare and all of that.
How was it, by the way, the partnership with your best friend? How did that work out?
Fantastic. He's still my best friend. I was the best man in his wedding, and we have, we look back on that experience with fondness and laughter, and we both agree what idiots we were. And
do you still work together?
We don't. No, he went further into the commodities world, and I went into the tech marketing side. Okay. He now runs a company called Urban Mining Company, where they turn magnets, used magnets, into reusable magnets for commercials. Okay. So he's doing, I call him Magneto. He's just doing all sorts of crazy stuff in that world. And I went the opposite direction. I wanted to be in an evergreen, evolving world that was never going to go away, meaning, in tech, and always be kind of constantly evolving. And I just felt a strong calling to merge the philanthropy world and the entrepreneurial world. It was just what felt right for my soul. And that's what drove me to start Roost and build that platform, and to try to be a pioneer in the for-profit social enterprise world.
And how did it work out?
It worked out well. It was the passion of my life. Financially, I lost my shirt. But it was, we did over 200 public speaking events, a TEDx on social enterprise. I was on the Today Show twice, Forbes 30 under 30 lists, LA Business Journal 30 under 30, those sorts of amazing accolades for kind of the work we were doing. But I learned a lot about being an operator, and what it means to listen to the market. And I made almost every mistake in the book, operating that business, from not listening to what the market was telling us, to being overly passionate about my idea, being too in love with my baby, to making the wrong hiring decision, you name it, right? And we raised money, about $1.5 million over 5 years. And the largest check size before the last 6 months of business was like I don't know, 20 grand. Most were like 5 grand. So
Wow.
it was kind of death
Wow.
by paper cuts on the fundraising side. We never could hire appropriately the way we needed to. And so, I hit all these landmines, and then we ended up selling the platform to a company in Santa Monica for pennies on the dollar. And I was determined. It was not the financial exit we wanted. And I was determined to never make that mistake. And if I wasn't going to make the money we had expected to, I was damn sure to take the lessons to apply it for my next business journey. And that's really what Stealth has been about. It has been, we've been in the trenches, taking the lashings and the whippings for 10 years. And now we've been applying those learnings in a positive manner to young brands and brands that are in growth stage, helping them move faster, helping them find their market opportunity quicker and catch that wave. And it's been a fantastic ride the last 6 years.
So subscription box companies, let's talk about that. Why do you think that has been such a popular trend in recent years?
So the subscription industry has been around for a long time, right? It's been around since music and CDs and magazines, Omaha Steaks, right? Like, this is not a new business model. It's just been applied in mass recently to a lot of different ways and a lot of different products. During the boom of the economy, everything was seemingly a subscription. And in that boom, really what people were tapping into was the convenience factor or the discovery factor. In this post-COVID world, what we're seeing is that the nice-to-have subscriptions are struggling. And the must-haves or need-to-haves, the things that are on the kind of bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those are doing really, really well. And so when people say, is subscription going to go away? The answer is no. The subscription model is not going to go away. It is an incredibly powerful business model. Excuse me.
But perhaps the luxury art subscription box that you get every month is going to go away.
Right. We joke the underwater basket weavers box, that kind of stuff is nice to have. Now, what's interesting, if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy, is that in this post-COVID world, when we look at the bottom of the pyramid, that is the safety, the psychological and physiological safety needs that people need to get in place, right? It's your food, it's your basics, it's your shelter, it's all of that. But as you start going into the kind of middle of the pyramid, you start getting into the sense of like belonging, right? And the need to have tribe and the need to have, a sense of community. And so some of the products that previously were looked at as nice to have actually become must-haves. And so what's interesting is there's been this major psychological shift in the last month in consumer behavior that has actually made some subscription brands boom more than they ever have before, right? You only need to look at this
because of the belonging piece. Which is actually a good segue into one of your businesses, which is Yoga Club, which maybe perhaps on the surface, some people might think, well, yoga is a nice to have, but there's also is an element of belonging, community, being part of a tribe, people who all have a common interest when you think of people who are into yoga as an interest area.
Yeah. So when going back, so Yoga Club, we founded and came up with the idea inside of Stealth. And then it spun out to become its own company with its own operating team and capital and funding and all of that. But we incubated and validated the concept inside of Stealth. And it was really centered around how do we take the value chain of the supply chain of yoga apparel for women and cut out the middleman, cut out the distributor, cut out the retailer, and go direct. And if we could do that, we could pass along the savings to women who want this yoga apparel, not just as like yoga apparel, but athletic apparel and kind of the new sweatpants and casual apparel and around the house and even going to work and things like that. And so what we did is we specifically engineered, this was one of the in-house brands that we've done, is we specifically engineered that business model to be focused on disrupting women's athleisure market. So instead of going to Lululemon and buying a pair of yoga pants for $120, with Yoga Club, you get a curated outfit of brand name, not Lulu, but other brands. There are other brands. You get a curated box just for your exact style of up to 3 pieces, an outfit for about $89, right? Originally, when we launched the box, it was $45 for $100 worth of value. And then we just kind of grew it from there and saw what people wanted. And that business started out just as an idea, a crazy idea. Over a weekend, I built a Shopify storefront and we drove some traffic to it on Facebook to validate it. And within a week or two, we saw that there was incredible demand for it. And so actually started to build that into its own property. And now it's running with its own management team and growing like crazy. But that subscription, it is in a boom market. It becomes a nice to and kind of in between nice to and must have. In a down economy, people say, well, you don't need yoga apparel that much. True. Your frequency is probably going to change. However, you're also much, 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 much less likely to buy a $120 one pair of yoga pants.
Right.
So focusing on the value chain inside of subscription business models as a whole, yoga club aside, is critical to having longevity and thriving during a downturn. And if you look to kind of the comps of 2008, 2009, 2010, the big retail brands that made it through, that didn't just go through it, but that thrived, were TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ross, Walmart, right? Because people still needed that stuff, but didn't want to pay full price.
Right. What is your process for incubating and validating a new idea? You mentioned just brainstorming and putting up a bare bones Shopify site, throwing traffic on Facebook to it. But even before that,
yeah. So I told you when we shut down Roost and kind of sold the assets and moved on, and I became this EIR at the venture fund. I took a long weekend, about 4 or 5 days, and went up to a mountain cabin with my dog and shut off my phone and took all the data from the 1,000 brands that we had managed under that platform and the brands that we were working with at that time. And I poured over the quantitative and qualitative data of all the common denominators that I saw to be successful pieces and attributes of these direct-to-consumer brands, and wanted to see if there were any kind of any common denominators. And what emerged from that was five criteria that are omnipresent in any direct-to-consumer brand that is successful and growing. And so these 5 criteria, we call them our MVP criteria, minimum viable product criteria. And I'm happy to share those with you if you want to share those with your viewers as well.
Yeah. Go ahead. If you just want to go over them.
I'll spout them out too, but I have a larger article that I wrote for Entrepreneur about this, because this has become the biggest predictor of success that we've seen in working with clients as well as incubating our own ideas. The 5 are as follows, and they seem really simple, and that's because they are. First and foremost, number 1, it needs to be a passionate interest group that's clearly defined, right? So somebody, and the way that you can think about that is, if we get together and we're strangers and we don't know each other, we can geek out on it, right? Mm-hmm. EO is a great example of that. Yoga is a great example, right? These kind of clearly defined groups. Second one is that group needs to be large enough. It needs to have a scalable enough size for you to have critical mass so that you can create a large enough business. And large enough is relative based upon what you're trying to do, right? But if you're trying to acquire customers online, what we find is generally inside of Facebook, it needs to be about 20 million people or higher in a Facebook group or a Facebook interest group. Third is you need to have a very unique value proposition. And this is really the why should people care? What is disruptive about this? If you think about Facebook and Instagram ads, and today at Stealth, we manage anywhere between $2 and $4 million of media per month across Facebook, Instagram, Google, all Pinterest, YouTube, you name it. And so, when we are doing that advertising, it is mostly interruption advertising, right? You're browsing your social feed and we insert an ad based upon something in your social graph that we think, or the algorithms think, is relevant to you. And we're interrupting your social browsing feed to bring you our ad. And so if your value proposition is not unique, capturing, or something that gets their attention right away, you're not going to get the clicks, right? You're not going to get served. So that could be as simple as like a wooden watch that plants a tree for everyone you buy. It could be the yoga club example is a good example of disruptive price point, right? And there's lots of others that are out there.
It can't be just boring, just any other competitor, the same as everyone else.
The Me Too's generally don't work. It needs to get people's attention. The fourth one is you need to have compelling unit economics. It's a two-sided coin. You need to have enough gross profit margin, 50% or higher, for just product-based gross profit. And you need to have a disruptive price point for the consumer. If you are priced too high or you have too low margins, either or, you're either not going to have enough demand, or if you have your gross product margins are below 40%, they're below 30%. It's the faster you grow, the faster you'll go out of business, unless you're just constantly raising capital, right?
Mm.
At about 50% or higher on a gross product basis, you start to have a CAC to LTV ratio, customer acquisition cost to lifetime value ratio, that starts to make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this compelling unit economics piece is really centered around supply chain, right? If you have a good supply chain and you figured out some way along the board to actually disrupt that, chances are you're going to pass that price on to your consumer and you're going to have good metrics yourself.
Yeah. Now that's a whole nother discussion of what's happened with the supply chain with China and coronavirus and all that kind of stuff. So I'll pause on that while you continue with this discussion though.
Yeah, I totally agree. But let's come back to that because that's a big problem.
Yeah.
The last one is very simple, but most people miss it. Is just it solves a customer or market pain. It actually solves a pain.
Mm-hmm.
Many people build products that are their babies or they're nice to have, or they get down this rabbit hole of the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. It doesn't work like that. Right. And so in today's world, in post-COVID-19 scenario, this is even more important because people are not buying nice to haves. They're buying must haves. Right. And those must haves solve some sort of pain. Right. And the must, like I was talking about, the middle of the pyramid is starting to change, right? Once they have their food, their water, their shelter, right? And they have their toilet paper and all that stuff taken care of, they start to be like, okay, I'm at home, now what, right? And I need to stay sane and all of that. And so one of our newest platform is called Nonna Live, Nonna Live.
Yeah,
this is
a really
virtual
interesting
cooking
one. Yeah.
It's a virtual cooking platform, cooking classes live with grandmothers from Italy, live streamed, teaching you how to make pasta. And this is absolutely taking off because of just people are home. Once they've got their food in place, they're looking for activities to do. They're looking for pieces of inspiration. I mean, these are like the cutest little Italian grandmothers you can ever imagine, right? Teaching you how to make pasta live. It's just a great experience. And so is that a must-have? It's not a must-have in terms of survival, but it's a must-have in terms of it's helping keep people sane and inspired in the shelter-in-place environment. So, however you look at the market as a whole, you said, how do we at Stealth evaluate concepts? The first thing we do is we run it through those 5. And if it misses one of those 5, we will adjust it until it hits all 5, and not in a way that we are drinking our own Kool-Aid, but in a way where we're like, it's clearly yes, 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 yes. If it does, then we'll proceed forward with a test.
So do you have these, you said you launch, I think, a couple of brands a year or one a year or something like that. Do you have these brainstorm sessions where you just lay it all out and you kind of duke it out with other members of the team? Like, no, that's missing this piece. Oh, but we could adjust it this way and add this piece.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes we have these ideas and we'll run it through and we'll build and write like a little concept statement, a 1-pager, and we'll test it even. Sometimes it'll hit all 5, and we will build a little mini Shopify store before we even have product, a little facade to drive some traffic, a couple $1,000s of traffic to it to see if it works. And then sometimes it dies on the vine after that. So kind of the process chronologically is come up with an idea, we run it through the 5, and then actually what we do now, what we've learned in the last few years, is we'll run a financial planning and analysis exercise before we build a Shopify store. We used to get really excited and build a Shopify store, run traffic to it, and then be like, oh, well, can we actually make money off this? Or how much money will we need to buy inventory?
That's kind of a classic mistake with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? They move immediately to building the Shopify store, building the thing before they've really, thought through those pieces as you articulated.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that too, right? Because it can be really exciting, and you can, build a fake store and have this disruptive price point, and then you'll be like, oh crap, I need $1 million to buy inventory, or my payback period of customer acquisition cost is going to take me 4 months or 6 months, and the cash float is going to be too much risk reward. Yeah. So what we do now is we run through the 5 criteria. We have a financial pro forma model template that we will plug the numbers into. We'll make sure that it kind of backs out and makes sense. Then we'll build a Shopify store that we will be very light. We won't have supply chain yet figured out. Basically think like a Western movie set, saloon facade, right? And when people buy, we don't actually charge their credit card. It's authorized, but we don't capture. Right. And so what we're doing, and then we send them an email saying, congrats, you were part of an alpha test. We're launching in a few months. We'll send you your first box order, et cetera, for free. Right. And if we launch, we take care of those customers and communicate with them.
Got it. Now, you mentioned supply chain. Let's circle back to that. How is that disrupting subscription box companies right now?
Everyone is affected, with China having gone down and into quarantine before us, and kind of with where everything is today, it is a massive ripple effect. And what we're going to see happen here moving forward, we were just talking about this internally yesterday, is 3PLs, third-party logistics companies, are having a hard time staffing because you're generally staffing with kind of minimum wage or lower wage type employees. There's a lot of people inside of them, so there's regulations, et cetera. So they're getting backlogged on their own orders. Things that needed to be shipped from China or other areas or other countries are backlogged or are no longer shipping because they are been the factory's been changed to another direction in some way, shape, or form. What that's done is that's created a tremendous shortage in certain areas, a backlog and interruption in others. And what's going to happen is as we come out of this quarantine in the next, I think we're going to be in some sort of shelter in place, at least for the next 90 days. It may start to ease. It's April 14th. I wouldn't be surprised if, things start to ease in July. Right. Some cities might be different in some areas, but I think we're in some sort of new normal for the time being. And so as you start to see these 20 million people that were laid off in restaurants and service and travel, et cetera, come back into work, and these other businesses start to come back to life, you're going to see also major supply chain issues because the demand is now going to be greater than the food supply, than the beer supply, than all these things. And so we're going to have this a little bit of a chunky economy is what I estimate, right? There's going to be this ebb and flow of these, mass demand purchases like toilet paper. We saw that, right? And hand sanitizer and masks to kind of shortages, right? And then supply chain is going to catch up. So, from a subscription side of things, the good news being in a subscription brand is generally you're looking and you have inventory for 3 to 6 months already on the shelf, right? And so a lot of these brands already had a lot of their inventory ready to go. And they're not buying in just in time because it's physically not able to kind of have the supply chain match up with their demand and their growth.
Yeah.
So that's the good news on a lot of these subscription brands. The bad news is
eventually the chickens are going to come home to roost. It'd just be a little delayed. Yeah,
exactly. Or they can't grow as fast as they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that it seems like that might be, there's all kinds of uncertain things happening now, but that seems like that might be one of them. Well, I know we're short on time and I know you have to go in a little bit. So we'll wrap things up with the question I always enjoy asking. This has been great, really insightful, interesting learning about your background. So we're pretending we're at an awards banquet, much like the Oscars or the Emmys. You're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up until this point, Brent. And who do you thank? You mentioned your best friend. You mentioned his uncle. Who are the people that you would acknowledge in your remarks?
It's a great question. I would be totally remiss to not thank my parents, both my dad and my stepmom who raised me. My mom passed when I was 6. But my dad and my stepmom gave me the opportunity and believed in me and, helped me through college where they could and how they could and kind of showed me the path in their own ways, the best that they could. And they've always been nothing but loving and supportive of me to this day. And actually, my stepmom works with me. She's our chief compliance officer. So
cool.
Yeah. So, we have her on the team, which is wonderful. I think also I had 2 professors in college. One when I lived in Italy, in Florence, my junior year. He was an entrepreneurship professor that opened my eyes, my first entrepreneurship class ever. Actually, when I got back, I ended up declaring as an entrepreneurship minor. And his name was Professor Anselmi. And he just opened my eyes to the world of entrepreneurship and thinking differently. And then when I got to school, back to USC, one of my entrepreneurship professors there, Patrick Henry was his name. And he just helped me really. I was with him all 4 classes for 2 years. And he was a pivotal person who really believed and pushed me and taught me the power of building my network. And one of the speakers he brought in told me a great quote that always stuck with me, which is, "Your network is your net worth." And that was Rob Ukrapina. So those are some of the major influences in my life. And they've been those people, from my parents to these 2 professors, have been mentors of mine. And I am very grateful.
That's great. StealthVentureLabs.com is the website. Where can people go to learn more about you, Brent, and connect with you and ask any questions they have?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach out to me directly. You can also email me directly at brent.freeman, that's Freeman, at stealthventurelabs.com. Brent.freeman at stealthventurelabs.com. You can hit me on LinkedIn. You can shoot me an email directly, and grateful to have been your guest.
Great.
Thanks,
all right.
John.
Thanks so much, Brent.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
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 And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.